Which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? In response to adverse environmental conditions, many plants produce abscisic acid, ABA, a stress hormone. ABA triggers a slowdown in the biological processes of most plants. Blank, when the mustard plant, Schrenklela parvula, produces ABA in response to an environmental stressor, the hormone triggers accelerated growth. So between the second and the third sentence, there's a contrast, where the second sentence highlights how ABA triggers a slowdown in the biological processes of most plants, and the third sentence highlights that the production of ABA in the mustard plants result in accelerated growth. So the best transition word to fill this blank would highlight the contrast between these two sentences. So let's look at the answer choices. A. Moreover. This is incorrect because moreover would imply that this third sentence would continue discussing the effects of ABA, but this is not the case because the third sentence discusses a contrast to some typical expectation, which is that ABA typically triggers a slowdown in the biological processes of plants. But the third sentence highlights that in the mustard plant, ABA triggers accelerated growth. So A, moreover, wouldn't fit here, and therefore A is incorrect. B, in contrast. This seems to be the correct answer because this correctly highlights the difference or the contrast between the two sentences, where the second sentence highlights how ABA typically results in a slowdown in the biological processes of most plants. The third sentence highlights that in the mustard plant, ABA instead causes accelerated growth. So in contrast emphasizes the difference between the mustard plant and other plants. So B seems to be the correct answer. C, for example. This is incorrect because for example would imply that the third sentence is an example of what was said earlier, which would highlight that the third sentence would show an example of how ABA triggers a slowdown in the biological processes of most plants. But this is not the case because the third sentence highlights how the mustard plant, when it produces ABA, instead triggers accelerated growth, not a slowdown. So C, for example, is incorrect. D, thus. This is incorrect because thus implies that this third sentence is a logical conclusion of what was said earlier. But as before, this is not the case because the third sentence highlights a contrast to what was said earlier. So therefore, D is incorrect. And the correct answer is B.